Put the remote down. Step away from that TV. That giant red -$500 price tag hanging from the screen is not a gift. It is bait. Right now, across every Best Buy, Costco, and big box store in the country, retailers are running a coordinated pricing theater designed to make one specific type of bad TV look like the deal of the century. And the worst part is the TV they are discounting so aggressively was never worth the original price to begin with. Today, we are covering 4 TVs. One you must walk away from, no matter how good that discount looks. 2 that represent the smartest money you can spend in 2026. And one that has quietly become the most technically advanced screen available at a price that, for the first time, regular people can actually reach. Stay until the end, because the #1 pick comes with a hack that changes everything about how you buy it. If a bad TV purchase has ever cost you more money in the long run than you saved up front, subscribe. That cycle ends today. Let us start with the one you need to avoid. The Samsung Q60 series, including the Q60D and the Q60F. Walk into any major retailer right now, and you will find this TV front and center, with a price that has been slashed by $400 or $500. Samsung knows exactly what they are doing. The logo is trusted. The discount looks enormous. The word quantum is printed on the marketing material, and that sounds expensive and premium. None of that changes what is actually inside the box. The Q60 uses edge-lit LED backlighting. That means there is no array of lights behind the panel. Instead, a strip of lights runs along the edges of the screen, and those lights try to illuminate the entire display from the sides. It is the cheapest, most primitive backlighting architecture in modern television manufacturing, and it has one unavoidable consequence. The light is never evenly distributed. In dark scenes, the edges of the screen glow with a visible cloudy haze that bleeds inward. Rtings testing confirms the Q60 has 0 local dimming capability, which means the TV cannot control which parts of the screen are bright and which are dark at the same time. Everything is either on or off together. The 60 Hz panel makes it worse. 60 Hz means the screen refreshes 60 times per second. For watching a slow drama in a static living room, that number is survivable. The moment you put on a football game, a basketball match, or any action sequence in a film, 60 Hz is not enough to keep up. Players blur, the ball smears. Fast camera pans produce a judder that makes expensive content look like it was filmed on a cheap camcorder. Greg bought the Samsung Q60 last month after seeing the $500 markdown at his local store. He posted a 1-star review on the retailer's product page the following weekend. He wrote that during the first football game he watched, there was a visible trail following every player across the field like a comet. He said he stood 2 feet from the screen and watched light bleed from the corners across the dark areas of the picture. He returned it the next morning. The fake discount is the mechanism. Samsung marked this TV at an inflated price it was never actually sold at consistently, then dropped it dramatically to create the illusion of savings. You are not getting $500 off a good television. You are getting a bad television at a price that was engineered to feel like a bargain. Do not touch it. Subscribe if this channel just saved you from that exact mistake. Every week we do this, and it is always worth 5 minutes of your time. Now let us talk about where the real money goes in 2026. TV number 2 is the LG C5 OLED, and the reason it belongs on this list right now has nothing to do with its hardware, and everything to do with timing. LG has released the C6 and G6 as their current flagships. The moment that happened, every unsold C5 unit in every warehouse became a liability. LG needs that inventory gone. So they dropped the price dramatically, not because the television got worse, but because they need the shelf space. What you are actually getting with the C5 is last year's flagship OLED, the same panel technology that was the reference standard for picture quality 12 months ago. Perfect black levels, because every pixel shuts off completely to produce darkness. 4 HDMI 2.1 ports for next-generation gaming. Consumer Reports testing ranks its input lag in game mode at the top of its class. the same web OS platform that runs faster and cleaner than almost any competing smart TV interface on the market. The difference between the C5 and the current C6 comes down to a brightness improvement that measures roughly 10% in laboratory conditions. 10%. In a controlled side-by-side test with calibration equipment, a trained reviewer can detect it. In your living room, on your couch, watching the content you actually watch. That gap is essentially invisible. What is not invisible is the price difference, which currently runs between $400 and $600, depending on where you buy. The C5 is not a compromise. It is last year's best television at this year's clearance price. That combination does not come around often. When it does, the people who know what they are looking at move immediately. TV number 3 is the Sony Bravia 7, and Sony is not a brand that discounts easily. Their entire market positioning depends on charging a premium above competitors, and for most of their lineup, they hold that line without apology. What happened to the Bravia 7 this year is different. TCL and Hisense have been fighting a relentless price war in the mid-range mini-LED space, and they have been winning it. Sony watched their Bravia 7 sales stall and made a decision they almost never make. They dropped the price by $500 to compete. What that price drop unlocks is access to Sony's XR processor at a cost that finally makes rational sense. The XR processor is the reason serious reviewers have consistently placed Sony above other mini-LED competitors, despite often lower raw brightness numbers. It does not simply push backlights harder to manufacture impressive-looking peak measurements. It analyzes the content frame by frame and maps brightness, color, and motion in a way that is calibrated to how human vision actually processes images. The result is a picture that reads as more natural, more textured, and more dimensionally real than the numbers on a spec sheet would suggest it should be. Skin tones on the Bravia 7 do not look processed. Motion in slow cinematic camera pans does not stutter or blur. Older content upscaled to 4K does not look artificially sharpened. FlatpanelsHD testing confirms the Bravia 7 delivers out-of-the-box color accuracy that competing mini-LED sets from Chinese manufacturers require professional calibration to match. You are not paying for a logo. You are paying for a processor that handles the image with a level of intelligence the spec sheet warriors consistently underestimate. Who should skip it? Anyone who primarily watches sports in a very bright room and needs maximum raw brightness. In that specific scenario, the TCL QM8 and Hisense U8 will outperform the Bravia 7 on pure luminance. For everyone else watching films, shows, and mixed content in a normally lit room, the Bravia 7 at its current price is one of the most honest value propositions in the market. And now, the one that changes the equation entirely. The Samsung S90 QD-OLED. There is a moment that happens when you first sit down in front of this television and put on something you have seen before, a film you know well, a show you have watched 3 times, and you realize within the first 2 minutes that you have been watching a degraded version of it your entire life. The colors in what you thought was a familiar image are suddenly louder, more present, more alive than you knew they were capable of being. Reds that were always slightly muted. Greens in outdoor scenes that finally look the way grass looks when you actually walk outside. The screen stops being a screen and becomes a window into whatever is playing on it. That is what happens when you remove the filter. Standard OLED panels produce color by shining white light through a color layer. It works beautifully. It produces the perfect blacks the technology is famous for. But the filter step means some energy is lost. Some saturation is traded away in the conversion. The S90 eliminates that step entirely. Its pixels fire pure red, pure green, and pure blue light directly, with no filtering stage between the organic layer and your eyes. The blacks are still perfect. The contrast is still infinite. But the color that sits inside that contrast has a purity and intensity that standard OLED panels physically cannot match. A forum member who had owned 3 different OLED televisions over the past decade described setting up the S90 and watching a nature documentary they had seen on each of their previous screens. They wrote that the ocean footage looked like the camera crew had somehow captured footage with better equipment than they remembered, before realizing the footage was the same, and the television was simply showing them what was always there. Now the part nobody in the ads will tell you. Samsung's Tizen operating system, which runs the smart features on this television, is one of the most cluttered, advertisement-heavy, and unnecessarily complicated interfaces in the business. Your home screen will be occupied by promoted content. The menu structure requires more steps than it should for basic tasks. It is a genuine, daily frustration on hardware that deserves better. The fix costs $150 and takes 10 minutes. Buy an Apple TV 4K. Connect it to one of the HDMI ports. Set the S90 to launch that input by default. Never open the Samsung Smart System again. You now have the most visually advanced consumer panel available, paired with the cleanest, fastest streaming interface on the market. That is not a workaround. That is the intended configuration for anyone who knows what they are doing. Subscribe and stay close, because next week we are releasing the full breakdown of the 4 best TVs of 2026, ranked by use case. Movies, sports, gaming, and mixed households each have a different answer. If you buy the wrong one before that video goes up, you will watch the right one drop $300 in price 6 months later. We have seen it happen. Do not let it happen to you.